Who are you?
My name is Joe Gebbia. I'm the co-founder and chief product officer of Airbnb. I'm a graduate of the Rhode Island School of Design. I studied industrial design and graphic design, and I think what I'm in charge of here at Airbnb is making sure people on our website have an amazing and memorable experience when they use our product. That's from the point of entry where they come to the homepage, to the search process, to the messaging and communication, all the way through to the check-in, and finally leaving a review.
And who are you?
My name is Brian Chesky. I'm Chief Executive Officer at Airbnb, and I actually met Joe because we were classmates at the Rhode Island School of Design, and one weekend I literally moved up here from Los Angeles, California, and on a whim we started this company. At Airbnb, I am responsible for basically articulating the company vision and building a world-class team to achieve that vision.
Very cool. Tell me a little bit about what Airbnb does.
So Airbnb is a community marketplace where you can list or book anything from a private apartment to a private island in over 9,000 cities, close to 10,000 cities in 170 countries all over the world.
Where I first heard about you was at Y Combinator Startup School,
Yeah.
where you gave a great speech about how for the first 1,000 days of your business, nothing seemed to be happening. In fact, you were struggling for quite a while, and then it started taking off. And it's a great speech. People should watch that. We don't need to cover the whole history, but tell me just a taste of that history of that speech.
Yeah. So what no one ever tells you is how hard it is to start a marketplace. And we remember we had friends who had started either social networks or other kinds of websites, and we thought we would grow the way they would grow. And we didn't realize that we were a two-sided marketplace, and people on one side didn't want to do something if people on the other side didn't want to do something. It was a chicken and egg problem, and the problem was it wasn't just a chicken and egg problem. It was in 1,000 cities all over the world. So you had to get all these people, travelers and hosts, in all these thousands of cities before you were like a viable community. It makes perfect sense looking back why it would take 1,000 days, but on day 1, day 2, and day 3, I bet if you asked us how many days it would have been, we thought probably, and we had projections we'd be here in we're a couple months.
Yeah.
We had that kind of startup fantasy that you just build something, launch it, get it on TechCrunch, and suddenly things are set to go.
You mean that's not how it works?
It was anything but that.
It took a year to get on TechCrunch, and it was 600 days after TechCrunch. Paul Graham has this amazing graph that I showed during startup school, where he basically says you have the TechCrunch of initiation, you have the inevitable crash, and then you have the long trough of sorrows, where it just seems like it's crickets. And the companies that live typically are the companies that can outlive the trough of sorrows. And for us, that trough of sorrows, essentially where we had this, what we thought was a great marketplace, a store that no one was coming to, was for more than a year. It was more than a year.
What was the one thing that you did that got it to kick over a little bit?
Well, I think getting into Y Combinator was that one of those turning points in the company where we went from kind of groveling for money, for food, for users, to finally we just focused on the business to the point where we actually had a graph in our bathroom mirrors, both myself, Brian, and our third co-founder, Nathan. In our bathroom mirrors, we had a graph with a line of ramen profitability for the website. And every day, every morning, we'd get up. That's the first thing that we saw when we got up, and it's the first thing we saw before we went to bed. And so fixated in our minds was, how do we get to ramen profitability, which I think at the time was like $1,000 a week.
Yeah, $1,000 a week was the gold standard. And it's amazing to think it was only 2 years ago, because today the fundraising environment is much more favorable, I think, to entrepreneurs. But 2 years ago, Paul Graham actually, when we applied and we got into Y Combinator, when you were accepted Y Combinator, he sent us all an email. He said, if you want, we're only doing this one time, you can defer Y Combinator till the summer, or the summer session, because we actually don't know if anyone's going to be investing in companies. And I mean, it was like, people didn't know how bad it would be. Sequoia put out the RIP Good Times email, and now I think there's like 40 companies in Y Combinator. Our class.
Did you defer or did you go in?
We did, we went. And I think in our class there were 12 companies. And in this class, I think it was 40 or 42. So we were like a quarter the size. It was a tiny little room, and it was a pretty scary time. And his advice to us was, there may not be, I mean, it's absurd to think now, but his advice was, you better be ramen profitable because we don't know who's investing.
He gave us some good advice. He said, by demo day, you want to show 2 slides. And the first slide is a graph that's up and to the right. The second slide is that same graph up and to the right, and you label what it is, and it's not traffic, it's not users, it's revenue. And so that's what drove all our decisions during the Y Combinator.
Well, he gave you some other good advice too, which was go and find customers and talk to them.
Absolutely.
It was, I think, the second week of Y Combinator. So we had, right before Y Combinator, provided housing for the inauguration, and that was January 24th of 2009. And we told them randomly that we had gone to the inauguration. And we mostly went to the inauguration because we just wanted to be at a historic event. But when we went to DC, we hosted this thing we called a meetup. And of course, other sites have meetups, but we didn't really think we were going to do this ever again. And we told them all these amazing stories. We met all of our users. We got all these insights. We go to Mountain View for Y Combinator, and he looks at us, and he asks us, well, the inauguration's over. Where's your business? Because there's not going to be another inauguration for 4 years. We said, well, we don't have much business. But the little business we have is in New York City. People are booking rooms in New York City. And he says, so all your business in New York City, you're in Mountain View. And we go, yep. And he goes, why? We goes, what do you mean, why? He goes, your users are in New York, and you're here in Mountain View. What are you still doing here? Go to your users. And that made complete sense to us, but we didn't do it. And the reason we didn't do it is there's this idea where we thought there was this notion in Silicon Valley that you don't do something because it doesn't scale. Yeah. And it turns out, oftentimes in the early days, that those are exactly the things you should be doing.
It wasn't until that moment where we felt like Paul Graham finally gave us permission to go do something that completely didn't scale, right? Traveling to cities, holding meetups, going to your users' homes, like demoing the site to them, spending hours with them sometimes, like having a coffee and just talking about what are the problems you face as a host, someone trying to rent their property, and just listening to them and actually incorporating that feedback into the site. That doesn't actually scale, but that was the turning point for the business.
Actually, it does. I think it does scale. It doesn't seem like it scales.
Well, co-founders traveling around.
But the fact that you found the secret sauce by doing that, that's what scaled later on. Right?
It's amazing.
That's what brought you here.
If there's only a few pieces of if there was only a few pieces of advice you could give to another startup, I think do things that don't scale will be one of them. Because what that means is doing things that don't scale. What you really mean is you do what you really should do, but you're acknowledging that it doesn't scale. So in the lifetime of a startup, you should always do what you should do. And the things that don't scale, you should figure out a way to make them scale. And it turns out that like we'd be on the phone for hours with our users or like taking every phone call, customer support. We'd have to then think through creative ways to figure out a way to scale because you have to at some point. But what happens is you don't compromise the experience. You start with the experience you want and then you figure out how to scale rather than the other way around. And the other way around, we were in our White Castle, which is really just a 3-bedroom apartment, but we were like afraid to like get too involved. We didn't want to like, we had this notion, we didn't want to like meddle with the community. We want the community to just happen. The community didn't just happen. We had to create the community.
Yeah. The reason I wanted to come and meet you right now is South by Southwest is coming up.
Yeah.
On PlanCast, it's by far the most popular event on my schedule. I mean, there's going to be thousands of people. The hotel rates are first of all, most of the hotels are sold out. If you find one, it's $800 a night, and people are gonna, most people are late last minute, buyers of rooms and stuff like that. Yep. And they're gonna probably be trying to find an alternative because there ain't no hotel rooms. So what are you guys going to do for Austin for the South by Southwest conference?
Well, first of all, we're going to encourage more people to list their rooms. Austin has a very healthy population of a mix of entrepreneurs and musicians, very creative people. And I think this is an amazing opportunity for people to meet like really great people coming into South by Southwest and also make some money to help pay rent. Yeah. This is the opportunity of the year for them.
And you can rent anything from a couch to a full apartment, right? Or
absolutely.
A full house.
Absolutely. People rent private rooms. You can rent a shared space like a living room. You could skip Austin and rent your whole place while you're gone. If you don't want to be there for South by Southwest, why not rent your whole place out?
So let's say you're going by yourself and you don't have very much money. If you have $40 a night to pay, we have a place for you. You can probably stay in a living room somewhere. If you have like $60 a night, $80 a night, you can probably get your own bedroom in Austin within a few blocks of the convention center. And if you have a few $100s a night, let's say a few $100s a night, you could probably round up 4 or 5 of your friends. You can pool, if 4 or 5 you can pool a few $100s together, you can actually all have your own house together. And that's possibly the coolest thing. To go to a conference, to bring all of your friends with you, you guys could all, or even a startup could like rent out their own house and you guys could all, I mean, we have 5, 6 bedroom homes all over Austin. And the cool thing is we have a couple hundred properties available now, but for every place that gets booked, here's the great part of our website is these are real people. So if I have a place in Austin, it's a house and it gets booked, I have friends in Austin. I'm gonna tell them, hey, I'm sold out, but there's these other travelers who keep messaging me. You should put your home up. So that, like, it's spreading. And the two things, that's the good thing about our business.
Is that considered a viral loop for housing?
I would say so. It is. We have our own little housing viral loop. So we don't think that we're going to run out of space. We think we can accommodate hundreds and hundreds of people beyond the listings that are available today because people are adding properties every single day. Yeah. And there have a couple hundred available right now.
But you guys are available in 10,000 cities now?
We're in 10,000 cities, or I think the number is somewhere between 9 and 10,000 cities, but we're approaching 10,000 cities in 70 countries, and I think there's 175 recognized countries by the UN, so we're in almost every single country there is. We got 700,000 nights booked just in 2010. And on New Year's Eve alone, we had how many thousands of people just in New York City this year? I don't even...
a couple thousand people.
A
Just
few
in New York.
thousand.
Let's just say there were more people on Airbnb than the Four Seasons and the Hyatt combined in New York City.
We had more people on Airbnb than any single hotel in New York. And on a given night, we oftentimes have more people in New York or San Fran or Paris than the largest hotel in that city. If you were to pick out in New York City tonight, a random person in the street, you ask them where they're staying, the most common answer would be Airbnb. Yeah. So it's definitely spreading. And the really cool thing is it's not just bedrooms. We like this, it's everything. I mean, we have a whole collection of boats. We have 70 boats that are available tonight all over the world. We have castles. We have a collection of castles. We have treehouses. I mean, I didn't even know you could stay in a treehouse. Well, we have a collection of them that you could stay in.
Yeah. What's the weirdest place you've seen?
Seen or stayed in?
Either.
So, what's the weirdest place?
I don't know if it's weird, but I'd say it's the most unique property to me. It would be a private island in Fiji. So you can actually book on Airbnb an entire 13-acre island.
Did you have to be Bill Gates to book that? Or?
Absolutely not.
Actually, Lagaya, who's here, booked that private island.
You can be anybody.
How much does it cost for a day?
It was a deal of the day. When she booked it, I think it was $100 a night.
For an entire island?
Entire island.
Not bad.
You get your own private island. We have Jim Morrison's old home in West Hollywood. We have random things, like so in San Francisco we have a teepee. It's a digital teepee, and for like $40 you can stay in someone's backyard. This huge teepee that's connected, and it's got heat, and it's a really popular listing. Our most popular listing on our website though is called the Mushroom Dome, and it's in Aptos, California, and I think 170 people stayed there last year, and it's somewhere between a cabin and a treehouse. You have to see it.
It's amazing. We also have Frank Sinatra's former home down in Southern California. And we also have, if you want a vacation in the same beach house as Barack Obama, you can do that on Airbnb.
He just returned a week ago from the listing.
So we know it's vacant.
Yeah, it's available. We know that for sure.
Wow.
You can travel
Does
like
the Secret Service come with it too?
Yes, exactly. You can travel like the president.
How do you guys make money on this?
So all transactions are handled through the site. The core mission when we started this, we said we wanted to take what was a revolutionary idea and make it simple. So with a click of a button, you could see all this space with real people, but like a hotel, you click the book a button and you have a reservation. So we handle all payments through our website, and we take, on average, about 10%. Yeah. The more money you spend, the lower the fee. Yeah. So all payments are handled through the website. The booking is the thing that kind of changed everything, because it led to everything else that came after. What it meant was that we now had a paper trail of every single place where travelers were staying. So then people would leave reviews, right? And these weren't just, these weren't solicited reviews. These were transactional-based reviews. And what that happens, it created a community and a trust system. And if I'm going to send you money through the system, I want to know who you are. So you're going to have a profile with a photo, and then you could add your interest, and suddenly we can start to connect people. And I think Airbnb is about a couple things. The first thing is, as we said, it's about cool spaces. I mean, you can stay in a tree house, you can stay in a castle, a private island. It's also about connecting people in real life.
Yeah.
There's a lot of sites that connect you online. There's not a lot of sites that connect you offline. And I just came back from a Christmas vacation in Costa Rica where I stayed with this awesome woman named Michelle. Michelle, English is her second language. She's thousands of miles away, and I would have never known her. But now I have a friend for life in another country I would have never known. Joe came back from a road trip. You met how many people?
A 10-day road trip from Atlanta to Savannah, Savannah, New Orleans to Austin, Texas, Austin to Santa Fe to Tucson, and then Tucson to San Diego. And all along the way, in every stop, I stayed in an Airbnb, ranging from, at one point I was on somebody's futon to, in Austin, I stayed at this beautiful loft. It was actually, I think it was like $125 a night, but straight out of an Architectural Digest magazine. This was like one of those modern, beautiful Airbnbs that I've ever stayed at in the history of the site. And, along each way, I was just stunned by how welcoming the hosts on Airbnb were, right? Yeah. In some cases, they didn't even know who I was. It was kind of like an undercover boss, right? Traveling to Airbnb and staying on an Airbnb. So I got really authentic experiences. I got to see parts of Austin that I actually hadn't seen before. Yeah. You go to South by Southwest and you're around the convention center, right? You're in kind of a radius between the bars and the restaurants and nightlife. But I actually stayed a little bit further out in East Austin. So I got to see this whole other section of the city that, otherwise would have skipped over. And there's stories like that come out of New Orleans. I stayed in this really up-and-coming neighborhood, east of the French Quarter, with a guy that was giving me the history of his 1800s house and the coffee shops in the area. It was a truly authentic experience.
Very cool. Are you hooking into other social networks so I can follow these people on Twitter or Facebook?
You can
see their social graphs from there?
Yeah, you can connect to Facebook right now at Airbnb, and we can overlay connections to find out who on Airbnb that's also connected to Facebook in your social graph.
Okay. And going forward, we want to increase that integration, where we can be able to increasingly show your connections. Another really cool feature we have that we're going to be bringing a little bit more forward in the site experience are groups. So we have over 3,000 or 4,000 groups on our website. Popular ones include the Stanford University and Harvard University group, a lot of schools. And you could stay with other alumni all over the world. We have a Hacker News group, a Y Combinator group. You can stay with other YC alumni or Hacker News alumni or Hacker News, advocates all over the world. So
it's really cool. Really cool. You guys both went to Rhode Island School of Design, and you're probably one of the few tech company startup founders who've done that. What does that mean to the site? What's different about the site because you went to design school?
Well, I think when people come to Airbnb for the first time, the site design needs to communicate a sense of fun and friendliness, right? We're not sitting next to folks who see us for the first time next to their computer saying, well, of course you can trust us. We've done this hundreds of thousands, if not millions of times, right? So I think the design needs to communicate all the values of the site in the sense of trust and the sense of friendliness and the sense of usability, right? We have a design mantra. It's designed for our moms. We want to make it as easy enough for our moms to actually book and/or list a property on the site.
And I think one of the key things, and this came from RISD, and it certainly came from our education in industrial design, is that you design for yourself, and you have to become your user. So we would do things like we have project with design. That we have a NASA studio at RISD where you basically put yourself in the kind of environment where you're going to be, in space. Or we do medical equipment. You'd have to become the patient and sit on the table, or so you have to become the person you're designing things for. And I think that led to us becoming our own host, creating something for ourselves. That's very much a RISD thing. The fact that we both basically live on the product. I live in the product as a traveler. I gave up my home 6 months ago, and I stay every 5 nights in a different listing around the city. And Joe, as a host, is perpetually renting a room on Airbnb year-round. Almost every single person in the company uses our site very frequently, and our next goal is to then get our parents to use it. Because that's the next level of usability. If I can get my mom to figure out how to book on Airbnb, we're good.
And feel trusting.
That
she's going to have a good experience.
Right.
It's one thing when you get an early adopter saying, yeah, that sounds sort of
That's
fun,
easy.
have somebody stand in my house or whatever. But getting somebody who's not quite that early adopter to trust the system.
It's easy to connect two tech geeks. How do you connect two housewives?
Oprah. You guys are going to be on Oprah this year,
Yes,
right?
that's part of our strategy.
I think to riff off of what Brian was saying, an example would be the iPhone app that we developed. Airbnb's iPhone app was completely developed around a very iterative process. We'd do a build, we'd put it on our devices, and we'd go out into the field. We'd actually book a property through it. We'd go through a reservation, right? We'd use the maps, we'd use the itinerary, we'd use all the features, and we'd come back to the lab here at the office, and we'd say, okay, well, this clearly didn't work. We were way off on that guess. What's changed? And we'd quickly iterate through the process. And I think that's just how you develop a product in industrial design.
One of the other features we use that came from our living on Airbnb, I every night had to figure out where I was going to sleep at night, which is kind of a unique kind of challenge, right? And on Airbnb, we want to reduce the amount of friction. So if you want to find a place anywhere in the world, we want you to be able to get a confirmed reservation with that person who's a real person, who's got a day job, they've got a real life. We want to be able to facilitate that transaction as quickly as possible. And so I would be doing this every few nights with people who've got normal lives. And one of the features that came out of this frustration was a feature that we call Instant Book. And so the way a typical booking works is if I want to stay with you, I click the book it button, and I have 24 hours to hear back from you. And we send you an alert, you say, hey, Robert, Brian would like to stay with you. You have 24 hours to accept, otherwise they will time out. And you click accept, and you can decide who's in your home. But for a number of people, if you meet certain criteria, they're happy to accept you if you click the book it button. It's like a hotel. And so we now have about 120 properties on our site who are instant book. You can click the book it button and have a reservation like a hotel, but get a local experience. And we want to basically be able to spread that throughout the entire site.
Interesting. Well, this has been a great time. Where do we go to find our rooms for South by Southwest?
So you just go to Airbnb.com, type in Austin, you type in your dates, and you'll have a couple hundred properties available right now. And rooms range from $30 a night to, for a few $100s a night, you could get a whole bunch of friends and rent out an entire home. And it's just a few blocks from the conference center.
If you already live in Austin and you want to rent out some extra space, on the top right corner of every page on Airbnb is a big yellow button that says list your space.
Very cool. I just want to cover what's the infrastructure like before I wrap up.
Infrastructure?
Yeah, how you guys built? What's technically?
Technically.
How many machines are you on?
Oh, goodness. This probably best answered by Nathan, our CTO.
Yeah, two RISD guys, but we are hosted on Amazon, and we're Rails. Yeah, sorry. And Rackspace, no. And we're a Rails shop. So.
Okay. Very cool. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Robert.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
All right.